Mayor, we're live.
Great. So today is June 16th, 2021. The time is 5:08 p.m. and I am calling to order the Baldwin Park City Council special meeting. City Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Daniel Damian.
So at this moment, I'll make a motion to excuse Councilmember Damian and Councilmember Garcia. Can I get a second?
Okay.
Any objections? No. Continue, City Clerk.
Thank you. Councilmember Paul Hernandez. Mayor Pro Tem Alejandra Avila.
Here.
And Mayor Emmanuel Estrada.
Here. Thank you for that. Chief Deputy City Clerk, is there anybody looking to speak? Great. So at this moment, we will move on from public communications. And I believe we have an open study session and presentation by Terry Muse regarding solid waste rate increase.
Yes. Yeah. If I may, I'd like to do a short introduction. So good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. It is a pleasure to be here with you tonight. We have put together a brief presentation with regard to the proposed adjustments to solid waste rates as proposed by Waste Management. Waste Management is the exclusive franchise hauler for the city, and we're about to enter our 8th year of a 10-year term. Per the franchise agreement, Waste Management may request annual adjustments to the maximum rate schedule to reflect changes in the cost of doing business and to pass through those changes in terms of rate increases to their customers. Waste Management may request increases based on unusual and extraordinary costs arising from changes in, for example, state and local government programs, new laws, new mandates, and costs. And conditions affecting costs. However, rate increases are not automatic. The franchise agreement requires that rate increases receive City Council approval in accordance with Proposition 218, which requires that a public hearing be held to consider public testimony regarding the proposed changes. Incidentally, the public hearing is scheduled for August 4th, 2021. So this item will come back to you for action at that time. This year, in addition to the contractual CPI or COLA increase, Waste Management is requesting increases due to unusual and extraordinary circumstances due to the impacts of AB 1594 and SB 1383. SB 1383 in particular is considered to be one of the most aggressive pieces of legislation that the state has passed with regard to solid waste recycling in the last 20 years. So with that, I would like to now hand it over to Terry, Public Sector Representative for Waste Management, and her colleague, Kevin Matson, who's joining us via Zoom, to provide a high-level overview of the proposed rates and the implementation of SB 1383 programs.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening, Council and staff. Thank you so much for allowing me to spend some time with you this evening reviewing the new state organics recycling law, SB 1383, and how Waste Management can help the city be compliant with this new law, and how the new organics recycling program will affect the rates for service. Next slide, please. So tonight, I'm joined virtually by Kevin Matson. He's our Senior Manager for Organics Project Development for Waste Management. And together, we will review the extraordinary rate increase submitted by Waste Management for SB 1383 compliance, review the key findings of a study that CalRecycle performed on the state's SB 1383 infrastructure, look at the local infrastructure for organics, talk about an RFP that Waste Management conducted to try and find the best possible price for organics for our cities, and finally, give you some information on Waste Management South Valley composting facility. Next slide, please. This chart breaks down the rate adjustment and the extraordinary rate adjustment that we've asked for this year. It consists of 3 components: CPI, which Sam explained is the normal yearly price increase that our contract allows for, and also an extraordinary increase for green waste and food waste. So you see on the first line that the CPI increased from 481.9 to 498.7. And this is using the garbage and trash CPI for the US average. So overall, the increase was 3.49% in the overall rate. The second component is the extraordinary increase, which would be effective in July. And this is for the change in law regarding what is acceptable for processing of green waste to count as diversion. Currently, the Baldwin Park green waste is still being taken to a landfill and used as alternative daily cover. But the city's not getting credit for this diversion anymore due to AB 1594. This change in law was effective in January of 2019, which fell into the 2020 rate year. Last year, Waste Management proposed an extraordinary increase to take the green waste to a facility which counts for diversion, but the city declined. It seems like a long time ago, but this would have taken effect July of 2020 when we were in the height of COVID. The city decided to delay this implementation and rate increase until this year. So for the past year, the Baldwin Park green waste has not been counted as diversion. The extraordinary rate increase that we're requesting this year, effective July through January, is $2.27 per home. The Baldwin Park green waste can be taken to a facility acceptable by CalRecycle for diversion. The third component is the food waste component. As you know, in January 2022, SB 1383 will become effective, requiring residential and commercial food waste to be diverted from the waste stream. To make it easier and more cost-effective for residents, Waste Management is proposing to have residents place their food waste in their green waste cart. This will eliminate the need for a fourth cart on the street and also eliminate the need for a fourth truck on the street every Friday. This second extraordinary increase being requested is to begin taking all food waste and green waste combined together to a facility for composting. The cost to move from just green waste diversion to green waste and food waste diversion is an additional $2.29 per home per month. I know you're thinking, wow, why does it cost so much for composting? Well, I have Kevin Madsen, our Senior Manager for Organics Project Development for Waste Management, who will go into greater detail on why this state requirement is so costly. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Terry, and good evening, council and staff. Can you guys hear me okay?
You need to talk a little bit louder.
Sure. So can you guys hear me better now?
Yes.
Great. So before we jump into how we are expanding our organics infrastructure and the existing infrastructure, let's look at recent legislation driving this change. AB 341 and AB 1826 in 2016 that was focused entirely at businesses and phased in by generating volume of organics. AB 1594, which only started 18 months ago, when we saw the first major substantial shift in green waste volume in Southern California. And now what we're talking about starting next year is Senate Bill 1383. Can you go to the next slide, please? I have a presentation of its own just about SB 1383 and the key elements of jurisdictions will be required to adequately resource. That takes about an hour. I won't go into great detail, but I'll give you just a brief overview. It requires providing organic waste collection services to all residents and businesses. It establishes edible food recovery programs based on volume or generator. It's conducting education and outreach to all generators. Jurisdictions will also have to procure certain levels of compost, RNG for transportation fuels, or organic products based on per capita. They also have to plan and secure access for recycling and edible food recovery, which we are proposing today to secure access. And it will require substantial compliance and monitoring and enforcement actions from jurisdictions starting in January 1, 2024. Next slide, please. But what I really wanted to focus on today was just to talk about the infrastructure and how the dynamics of organics are changing in Southern California. CalRecycle's SB 1383 Infrastructure and Market Analysis Report. The report represents the results of a comprehensive statewide survey of California composters and AD infrastructure. It includes the status of these facilities, types of feedstocks processed, existing and future processing capacities, and conditions for marketed organic products, and also barriers to these facilities' expansion. I'm going to hit throughout this presentation key elements. One of them being that the report finds there is available capacity today. There's about 4 million tons of available permitted capacity for composting and anaerobic digestion. This capacity is not conveniently located, which brings me up to my next point, increased hauling distances.
Harry, I don't mean to interrupt, but can you ask him to speak louder? Because he kind of goes in and out.
Sorry, can you hear me better now?
A little bit louder.
All
Just
right, I
maybe
might have to
closer.
yell a bit. My apologies. So capacity is limited by various factors, but one that we have to appreciate is access available capacity may significantly increase hauling distances like landfills and like biosolid facilities. But good news, the third point here, markets are robust. So agriculture still and remains the single largest statewide market for composting, and it's identified again in this report. Next slide. The next 3 slides emphasize the unique geographies of Southern California with organics. This map, and I don't expect you guys to make heads or tails of the details, shows Sacramento. The shades of green are potential outlets for organics material. The yellow and orange is census blocks or population density. This is Sacramento at 25 to 50 miles. There's a tremendous amount of agricultural land for organic products available. Next slide, please. Now this is Southern California. And as you can see, the scale has already increased, where we're looking at over 150 miles just to get to agricultural pockets, the most robust being the Central Valley. Now, yes, there are agricultural pockets in Inland Empire, Coachella Valley, and Ventura, but according to this infrastructure report, even Southern California composters, 75% of the organics and end markets end up in the agricultural region, which is in Central California. Next slide. Another very unique Southern California geography is ADC, or alternative daily cover. This was processed green waste getting used at the end of the day on landfills. And it counted as beneficial reuse until 2020 with AB 1594. So this maps from Cal Recycle, and it shows 46 landfills in 2019 that were using green waste as ADC. The largest 4 landfills using 100,000 tons per year were all located in Orange County, San Diego, and Los Angeles County. The next 4 out of the 5 largest, for 50,000 to 100 tons per ton per year landfills, were also in Southern California, just showing the unique shift that needed to happen from even 2019 to now. Next slide. This is a map that currently shows that 148 facilities process yard waste from municipal sources today. And we rely on a network of these that I can go into detail with. Only 19 of these facilities are permitted to include food waste. And as Terry mentioned, the most streamless method for collecting food waste from our residents is exercising our yard waste bin instead of a 4th cart. Next slide. So that this table highlights some of those green dots that we've partnership locally, regionally. So we have Agri-Chino that we've been sending material to for a long time, cannot take food waste. Agri-Min Ontario cannot take food waste. Recycle wood products, which we have used out of our Azusa MRF to compost food waste, will not be able to accept food waste in the future. Then also some notable ones that we've partnered with in the past being BP John, Organics Ag, which is a land application company, and Organics Depot or Emerald Acres as well. Next slide, please. Here's the detailed list out of those 19 dots that are permitted for food waste. And while I wish I can go into detail of all the notes, I will leave you with the notes that go into detail of if there's processing capacity today, if they're full with processing capacity, and even such examples as CR&R AD, which is locally, but looking at about $135 to $150 per ton just on the tip fee alone. Next slide, please. The majority of those green dots that we saw in that map of Southern California were chip and grind, or what we call notification permitting tier composting. According to the report in Cal Recycle, chip and grind facilities won't help with food or related materials. Yes, they can take in municipal sources from green waste, but they cannot process our soiled food waste or soiled paper that's going to be needed with SB 1383. The next point that the report points out is collection drives infrastructure, not the opposite. So composting facilities go through an arduous process of expanding when the collection programs are implemented or expanded, not before. So here's a compliance criteria chart that I helped make that shows price ranges and if we're in the compliance criteria for residential food waste, commercial food waste, and pathogen reduction. As you see to the far right, while though it's cheaper, it's not in compliance with SB 1383. Same thing with the notification composting permitting tiers. It's not until we look at our own infrastructure, and which I'll talk about here briefly, that, like our WM South Valley facility and some of the facilities we plan on partnering with, that all three boxes have been checked. Next slide, please. Lastly, the report, the infrastructure report makes two very clear findings. Developing a new composting facility or expanding an existing one has become more challenging. The state's own reports estimate that nearly 90 additional compost facilities will be needed to hit SB 1383's goals. And I've highlighted here in red how many are needed in the South Coast Air District, where we are at today. So rules and barriers we've seen these in the two largest air districts in the state, the San Juan Key and the South Coast, that provide significant barriers for emission control devices and expansion for handling food scraps. These trends seem to be increasing and not decreasing. Waste Management recently developed a 500 ton per day composting facility at our Altamont landfill, and that's outside of Livermore in Northern California. That facility spent $1 million on purchasing air emission offsets alone, while previous years, few composting facilities would have to incur such cost. So this expansion that I'm going to be talking about has to be done with air and water quality standards, which is necessary. So that includes a more substantial cost, but more importantly, when we're talking today, is time to market. Next slide, please. So what is WM doing to expand our SB 1383 organics processing infrastructure? We released an RFP the same day SB 1383 was signed into law. From the 26 potential organic processors, so we even expanded into the Northern California market, we received 5 proposals for commingled yard waste, food waste. There were no local proposals from Southern California Basin, i.e. San Diego, Inland Empire, Los Angeles. And one of the 5 proposals was a development project, so not existing infrastructure. So WM is moving forward not only with our own internal infrastructure at South Valley, but also commitments with ecology composting in Arizona for our Inland Empire region, Synagro Southern Kern Industrial Composting Facility, which would be highlighted here out of our Azusa Murph facility, and Recology in Lamont, California. Please note that Synagro and Recology require processed ground material. So it is a benefit to our infrastructure that we have a processing facility at our Azusa Murph. Our Azusa Murph. Next slide, please. Besides that, we also do have a local area and static pile composting system that speeds up the process of composting. We're developing it with a local partner in the San Diego Inland Empire region. Unfortunately, I'm not able to disclose who that local partner is, but it will be soon, and we'll be happy to share that with you. We're also developing an AD, horizontal plug flow AD to RNG at our Lancaster landfill. As you can imagine, looking at our own infrastructure, Lancaster was one of the ones chosen because of our closest neighbor is about a mile away, and there is a pipeline connection. So there'll be more details to come with that. The goal message here is that we have a tremendous amount in our pipeline and exploring acquisitions, but there needs to be an interim process to get into compliance. And we're happy to do an annual review of that capacity. But what do we have today that's existing? Next slide, please. So our first composting facility in waste management Southern California market area, and it won't be our last, is our WM South Valley site. It's a 35 permitted acre site, 1,000 ton per day permit limit, about 156,000 tons per year annually. It's a traditional windrow composting, a premier maker of composting in the agricultural and Central Valley region, and it accepts materials permitted for green waste, food waste, liquid food waste, wood waste, and digestate. Next slide, please. So that's all I had today, and I know it went rather quickly, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but that was kind of an overview of the infrastructure coming down in Southern California and some of the challenges and uniqueness to Southern California geography. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to take questions or?
Yeah, if any council members or staff have any questions.
Mayor, I guess I'll start, unless you would like to. So thank you for that presentation, Terry. It's a lot of information. And I guess the gist of it is that there are very few sites that will accept the food waste at this point. And so the cost of creating capacity is an issue for waste management and I guess other trash companies. And I mean, that's the gist of what was presented, correct? And I guess our site will be the South Valley site for now, maybe until there's expansion to that plan. Is that the overall message?
Yes, that's definitely the overall message. So South Valley is our current answer to help the city become compliant. As Kevin stated, we are looking at developing partnerships in other areas that are closer. What we're proposing is that if by the time January comes along, if by some chance any of these projects have already come online and it is a lower rate, then we would definitely pass that on to the city. So what we're proposing for this rate is going to South Valley, which is in Tulare County and is what is available today for Baldwin Park.
So are some of the proposed costs that we are considering, you know, the fees that we're now passing to the residents, do those fees then factor into those costs for expansion? Is that what we're doing here?
No, this is just covering transportation and processing. Or its first would go to Azusa, the Azusa MRF, then it would be transported to the South Valley facility where it would be made into compost. So that's what the cost is for transportation and processing.
So in the future, when there's expansion to facilities, is that another potential cost that will be passed to the residents?
So the potential cost would be definitely, in the end result, what that would be per ton. Keep in mind that LA, Southern California market definitely is a more expensive market. So while there's, you know, transportation costs are high to go to Tulare, the actual cost of operation in Southern California are higher. So, you know, there should be a cost offset. We're hoping there will be a lower rate. We won't know until we're totally finished with those facilities, but definitely our goal is to try to find the best possible cost for our cities to be able to be compliant with this new law.
One of the reasons why I asked these questions is because I wanted to understand, is this like a one-time increase that we're looking at, or are we expecting that this will be an annual increase?
So once this increase is made to accommodate for the green waste, food waste processing, then what would be in the future years is the CPI, the cost of living. So I guess you could say it is a one-time fee in order to be able to provide the service, and then after that, it will just be whatever the annual cost of living increase is.
Yeah, so the CPI is standard for current operations.
Right.
And so now with this food waste, you know, being diverted, so the cost will just be a one-time is what we're anticipating. And then in the future, the cost, you know, of what we're, I guess, absorbing this year will be able to support future operations.
So if I'm understanding you right, are you thinking in terms of one time that this would go become effective this year and then would no longer be charged in coming years? Is that?
Well, well, that's a good question. I understand that it's going to be increased, you know, by let's look at the food waste, you know, diversion. I think I saw it was like $2.27 or something per month.
Right.
And so what I understand is that will continue moving forward, but I'm trying to understand, will there be additional costs?
Right, that will continue moving forward. And the only additional cost would be involved with the CPI.
Okay.
If I may, Councilmember Garcia, the remaining duration of the franchise agreement is 2 more years, Sam, right? So within the context of this contract, any escalation is contained within the 10 years. What we do beyond that, of course, we would have to come back to council. But we, as a city management side of this, we will do everything we can to mitigate escalations. The troubling part of SB 1383 is that it is as close as anything that comes from Sacramento to a unfunded mandate as it can get. And as you know, by state law, anything that is imposed by the state that is not funded, they should pay for it. But of course, that's just, right? But it's so darn prescriptive. I mean, the fact that we were able to use green waste for ADC up until this year or last year, that's a blessing. Because in LA's case, I'm sorry to bring up LA, because that's my background. We started diverting green waste 20 years ago. So from a cost mitigation point of view, the fact that ADC was utilized as a resource diversion practice, that from a cost point of view, that was a blessing. No longer allowed, correct?
Right, no longer allowed.
Okay, yeah, thank you for clarifying that because, yeah, so I guess what we're looking at is the CPI for the next 2 years for the current contract. Seven
Right.
per month for the remaining 2 years. That will remain in effect for 2 years. It won't increase more than that. That
Right.
is- Okay.
Just the CPI. And it is 2 increases from July to January is the increase to start diverting the green waste to a composting facility. Because right now it's going to a landfill. And then in January is when would be an additional increase to start taking the green waste, food waste together to a composting facility. There's two parts to the extraordinary increase.
So there's an additional increase from the 229 in January?
So the CPI, the 3.49% is the July 1st increase. Then from July to December 31st would be the increase of $2.27 per home. And that's for the green waste diversion. And then starting January 1st, it'd be additional $2.29 per home per month. So that's a total of $4.56 over the course of the year that it would be in order to have the green waste, food waste program and be compliant.
So from this July 1st to December, the increase is 227. And then in January, it'll be 229. So as of January, it's a total of 456.
Right.
Total.
Right, plus the average CPI, which is about between
And the
73
CPI.
cents and $1.78 by cart size.
Now, I was going to ask thank you, Ms. Garcia. I was going to ask the exact same questions about the cost. I also have another question. The container the green waste container the residents have now, it's not a very large size. And right now they're probably putting the food in the regular trash can. Is that going to be large enough for the residents, or are you going to make that container bigger?
So residents can have 2 green waste carts at no additional charge. So we're anticipating that they'll be able to fit their green waste in 2 carts. A lot of people currently have just 1 cart, so they'll have the ability to get a second cart at no additional charge. And it's we really don't know exactly how much organic waste is going to be diverted from the trash can into the green waste.
And they will be notified that they can order an extra green container
Yes.
on their bill or however they get their notifications, or are you sending out extra notifications in addition to
So Sam and I have been talking about doing above and beyond in terms of communication to people beyond, a billing stuff or beyond the now. I'm looking at reaching out to local organizations, the churches, schools, adult school, whatever avenue that we can to be able to communicate the increase and also the process that's going to take place, because it's definitely going to be a change of habit, a change of life for people. It's going to be something that none of us are used to doing. So we're going to try and reach out to every possible avenue that we can to try and communicate this information.
Or did you have a question?
No, my only concern is that it seems that over the span of a year, residents and stakeholders in the city have a potential of reaching an almost $7 raise within that year. Is that correct?
Yeah, if they have, say, for example, a 96-gallon cart size, yes, that could be.
And then how do we calculate the raise?
The regular trash rates?
No, the ones regarding the
waste?
state mandate.
So that's what we do, is we take the pounds per home, and that's how it's figured out what the cost would be, because organics is all based on weight. Pretty much anything trash, recycled, it's all based on weight. So that's how we come up with the figure for the green waste, food waste increase. And I can tell you how much Baldwin Park, per pounds per home that Baldwin Park currently has is 112 pounds per home per month is what is generated. And that's generated because when we collect the from the green cart, that's how we're measuring the organics. That's
Okay, that was my only question. Is there any more questions from council or staff? Mr. Councilmember Hernandez?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Terry and Sam. Just out of curiosity, as we understand this, what are the consequences if we were to delay implementing the green waste and the food waste adjustments?
so in this mandate, CalRecycle can fine a city $10,000 a day if they are found to not be making a good faith effort to comply with this law.
The second question I have is, given everything that we've gone through COVID, is there any updates or legislative pushback or postponement in regards to these two items?
So the COG I know has been working on this. League of California Cities has been lobbying Sacramento to try to get some sort of a delay in implementation. And the state has adamantly said, no, there's no delay in implementation regardless of COVID. There is a piece of legislation right now that's been introduced that would delay the enforcement or the fines. So not delay the implementation, but that the state could not start fining cities starting January 2022, because the way the law is written, they can start January 2022.
And in regards to this, what other jurisdictions have already started to move forward with these fees? At least those that you guys represent.
So as you know, this is price increase season for just about every city. Most of them are this week and next week is when they're going to be going before their councils. But already Norco already has adopted, they adopted it last year, an organics program. Rolling Hills Estates just recently last week adopted one. Trying to think. Kevin, do you know of any other cities that have adopted the organics program?
No, but we're having, tons of conversations right now with every city.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
No specific examples from last year, but every city's being approached this year.
Yeah, so we're going before all of our cities at this point, and just about every city is going through this. Unless some say, for example, San Dimas has a January price increase implementation, so we will go to them at that point.
In relationship to the private commercial users, how does that affect them? And I mean this in the sense of, the apartment building or owners or managers.
So this law also affects multifamily properties. So they are required to recycle their green waste, food waste, just like single family homes.
Will they also be seeing the same amount?
No, so for the commercial side, there is an increase that would be, right now, for example, a multifamily property or a business, because the multifamily and business community, AB 1826 came into effect years ago, and they've already been required to do this. To be honest with you, most businesses and multifamily properties are not doing this. That is why this whole law came into effect, because people weren't voluntarily doing this. That's why they're requiring it now. But for the businesses it would go from $90.62 for a 64-gallon organic cart to $94.91 a month for an organic recycling cart. So we're proposing carts for businesses and for multifamily properties also because it's so heavy that having a bin would probably be, just be way too heavy for anybody to pick up or to move. What we have done also is we've surveyed every single property, multifamily and business in Baldwin Park. So we know exactly if they have space for a cart, space for a recycle bin, because a lot of businesses and multifamily still aren't recycling. We also have determined some businesses and some multifamily properties, maybe their gardeners taking the green waste away, or they're taking their recyclables to, say, Allen Company. That's allowed as diversion. So we have identified those properties, and so we're working with the city for them to be able to apply an exemption to them. So that is possible.
And when you talk about businesses, are you also including restaurant waste?
Yes. It's every single business.
Got it. And Sam, maybe you know this, perhaps, are apartment owners or business owners for multifamily homes, are they also, this is an allowable pass-through that they can give to their tenants?
I
Maybe it's a question
don't
for
know
them.
the answer to, but I am assuming that is the case. Yeah. But I can definitely go and research it and get back to you.
Right. I mean, I'm all for this in the sense, but I certainly don't want to be the tip of the spear, right? Considering, if there's legislation that's going to perhaps push this back, slow this down. I understand the value of why we have to do this. My only concern is, close to, $7 or, $2, $5, or $4 and, sorry, I can't do math in public, $4.49 or 46 cents, whatever it is, that individuals are going to have to see, in their bill, and they may not necessarily understand the why, right, as well as you have done. So I would urge you and Sam, but specifically you with Waste Management, to do a very good outreach effort in multiple languages and so forth, as you've already spoken to, that can help echo, what we're going to be saying, given essentially the mandate, as our city manager has said, is fortunate because there is no funding tied to this.
Right.
But, if there's a way of offsetting this to some degree for some of our customers, I'd really like to explore what those ideas might be. I don't know what those are, but we have bright staff, and we look to Waste Management for some of those ideas. Not to say that you're not going to be made whole, but it's a matter of how do we take some of the burden off of our residents and our businesses, if possible.
I think that one important component of this, the goal, of course, is to divert as much food waste from the landfill. So the thought process from the state is that if we're diverting more food waste and green waste to organics processing, then the trash volume will go down. Now, of course, the way the regular trash rates are set is by cart size. So in theory, if somebody's diverting trash from their trash, food waste from their trash to their green waste bin, they should be able to downsize their cart and therefore reduce their rate. That's going to be a definite message that we're going to be portraying to people to make sure that they understand that if they do this, they can see a cost savings.
I agree. The reality is more likely, considering, the blocks that I see with folks filled with their, black bin. I don't see the vast majority of items that are in the black bin food related, in the sense where it would make sense for a customer, a resident, to downsize because of that. And if we were to say that 50% of the stuff that people are throwing away is, that would fall under the green waste or the food waste, that would make sense. But I think your industry certainly would know that much better, that it's actually a much smaller percentage in reality. So that's why it's a good thing to message to people, but the reality is, I think, unfortunately, people are still going to want to maintain their black bin to throw away everything else that they can't put inside the green waste, which is quite a bit of stuff.
Well, hopefully we'll have anybody who has a 96-gallon trash rate right now, trash can, they will not be able to go down to a 35. That's the smallest, that's for sure. But hopefully they can go from a 96-gallon to a 64-gallon, which isn't such a huge jump. And I would challenge everyone, because I've done this myself, to just for a week, even for a day, to take any food waste, that would be scraps, that would be any food soiled napkins, paper towels, any of that, to set that aside and not put that in your trash and see how much food waste you are generating. It's really amazing how much food we waste, which is a second part of this law, is to get edible food into people that have food insecurity, which is another admirable part of this law, I think. But to see, just for your own experiment, to see how much you divert, and I think you'd be very surprised how much food waste that we all put in our trash can.
No, I would agree.
I actually,
If I may, just one last thing.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Just one item of potential way of reducing as a pilot program, right? I mean this as a pilot program. Perhaps there's a collaborative effort in which we can provide certain homes, not necessarily apartments, but homeowners with a compost waste bin where, that allows them to put their personal, green waste in there instead of, then be able to opt out of this version of, putting everything into the green bin. Because again, now what's happening is if we're thinking about the ecosystem, we now have residents putting in their own banana peels, food waste into their compost bin. In less than 3 to 4 weeks, they'll actually have compost, which they can then use onto their yards and so forth, their flowers and everything else. And I know some folks in our residents that already do that. So if there's a way of looking at that type of pilot program, that would help offset those individuals from that program, because then that means there's a way of either paying for it, the $5, or for them, going this other route. And at the end of the day, that actually is probably much better for the environment, because we're not talking about transportation, emissions, all that other good stuff. So
Definitely.
something, for us to really consider if that's a way of homeowners to opt out of this type of program by them, again, certifying that they do this, they have this, and if they're not doing it, then, obviously there's ways of opting them back in.
Great idea. Definitely we can include that.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Terry, you said that if we don't follow this, there would be a fine. What is the deadline for the cities to comply?
January 1st, 2022.
That's for every single city. So if, let's say, all the surrounding cities that have waste management are not complying, everybody will be fine. And what is the fine you said?
It's $10,000 a day, and it is based on CalRecycle's determination if the city is not making a good faith effort, which is up to their interpretation. Enrique might know a little bit more about how they would interpret this. There is, like I said, there is legislation right now that cities are putting forth to try and delay that enforcement process, but not the implementation, just the enforcement, so that give them some more time to be able to get this process off the ground and be able to get residents, complying.
They also define it as getting on a correction action path and having substantial circumstances that to be able to be cited to avoid those fines. So good faith, that terminology is not used in this legislation. It was in the past, but it's substantial effort now. So you have to still adopt ordinances and codes and other programs within this program before they will fine you. They want to put you on a correction action plan first, but we're going to wait and see what that actually really looks like.
Yeah, there's a whole process that they have before they get to the fining process, kind of like how code enforcement has a progressive action. That's what they have in CalRecycle also.
So we still have time then to get this process going and do more research and look at the numbers closely, because looking at all the numbers all together from a period from July to December, starting January 1, residents are going to start paying $6.34 more total with all those increases, including the API. That's a lot of money. It may not be a lot of money to some people, but that's a big increase in a 6-month span. So I think we need to look at the numbers closely and hold off in starting that rate increase in July, because let's look at more numbers. Let's see what the state comes up with. I know it's something we're going to have to eventually do. And I like some of the ideas Councilmember Hernandez has on giving resident the option of them taking care of it on their own. But let's do more research to see how long we can prolong this rate increase and see what the state comes up with, or a lot of money.
So I want
I
to point out
understand.
that the first increase is for green waste diversion, which is one that was supposed to have been done last year. The second one's the food waste. And I just want to point out that, as you know, Kevin pointed out, there's not much capacity for food waste in the state. So all of our cities who passed this price increase be effective in January, they're guaranteed that we have space in our facility for them. If they wait, we can't guarantee we're going to have space at our facility at that rate. We'll have to be shopping around for others, which may or may not be cheaper than what our South Valley facility is. So I just want to make sure I point that out.
So if we wait to the last minute, you're saying there might not be room for our city to take the waste there, and the increase will be higher.
It could be. It depends on other facilities. You can imagine there's a lot of scrambling from cities trying to find a home for their food waste. So like Kevin said, we did an RFP to try to see if we can find other food waste processors that would help us that we could contract with. Didn't get response because most of them already are at capacity or have very little capacity.
That's just interesting that the state mandates this, but yet they didn't look into making sure that there was going to be a facility to be able to provide the service and for our residents. So
I agree, 100%.
That's
Although
an
one
impact.
thing that Kevin had mentioned is that the way the composting industry operates is that they don't build it bigger, waiting for capacity. As the capacity gets generated, they start expanding. So hopefully this says, you know, they're hoping that in the coming years that there's going to be enough capacity. See what AQMD says. If AQMD lets to have very many more facilities built in our area, which we know they're very strict about air quality, which these obviously are ones that could, you know, contribute to smell, air quality. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Definitely. And the state seems to put the cart before the horse, but this is what they have dealt us.
And you said you're working with someone else, a company you can't disclose. So once you have an update with that, if that's possible, are you going to give us an update? Because you said the rate may decrease.
Right.
We get closer. Okay.
Definitely, we'll keep you posted. And like I said, what we propose for the rate increase is what we know would cost today to go to the South Valley facility. So what we're guaranteeing is that if the rate was to increase to South Valley, because we don't know what's going to happen with transportation, we all know fuel's been increasing, we would honor the price that we had quoted for this price increase. It would not go up. If it goes down or we find a place that's closer before January, then we will definitely lower the rate to accommodate that adjustment.
Mayor, I have some additional questions.
Yes.
So Terry, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was one of my questions, which I guess I should ask now as a good segue. So when you came up with these very specific numbers, these fees that will be passed on to the residents, I assume that it was based on the cost, the additional cost to waste management on this service. Like you said, the transportation and delivery, finding the site. Okay. So my question is, of the cost that was calculated, the additional cost to provide this service to the city of Baldwin Park, is 100% of that cost being passed on to the residents, or is Waste Management sharing any of that cost? And I think I heard you say that if, you know, there's fluctuations in the gas and that, you know, those would be absorbed because a fee would be honored. Right? But at this point in time, my question is there a shared cost, or is it all being, you know, calculated and passed on to the residents or constituents, stakeholders in Baldwin Park?
So what is calculated is what it costs today. Like I said, if things change, if fuel goes up, we're going to absorb that cost. If labor goes up, we're going to absorb that cost because we're going to honor the rate that we have proposed to you
Okay.
now.
So, yeah, no, I'm hearing the answer. It's basically 100% of the cost has been calculated and is being, passed to our stakeholders, businesses, residents. And so that answers my question. My second question is, what cities in the San Gabriel Valley does Waste Management serve?
Arcadia, Diamond Bar,
Okay.
Laverne, San Dimas, and Baldwin Park.
So Arcadia, Diamond Bar, Laverne, San Dimas, and Baldwin Park. Okay.
Oh, I forgot to mention that Arcadia last night passed the price increase for organics. I guess because I was there till after 10 o'clock, so I'm still kind of delirious. But yeah, they are our first city in San Gabriel Valley that passed the price increase.
Okay. And so they passed the price increase for the green and food waste.
Yes.
Okay. And so as far as the South Valley site where we're going to transport, this waste to, is Waste Management the sole trash contractor that goes there, or is it like other trash haulers that use that site? I'm just trying to understand the capacity because of the January 1st timeframe.
So Kevin could probably answer that better than I.
Yes,
you
we
hear the
own
question?
and operate the South Valley Compost Facility. We do accept third-party volume today. We have been told not to extend it past 2022 to ensure that we're maximizing as much of the volume from the Southern California Basin from our franchise customers. And until then we can explore other third-party agreements with local county and other haulers.
So if I heard him correctly, then, so South Valley site is controlled by Waste Management, and currently you accept third party, but that's going to be put on hold to reserve the space for the franchise cities.
Right.
Okay.
For January 2022.
Okay. So that's good to know. And I think for me, because I know that we had met, months ago. So thank you for getting in front of us and, getting in front of the issue. And I appreciate how you and Sam have been informing us as this has developed. It is still a lot of information to absorb at the moment. And so I think I would be prepared to move forward with the CPI because I know that that is part of our contract and that's a standard approval that we do every year. And I wouldn't want to hold that up because it only compounds the price and the cost at a later time for our residents and stakeholders. But I would like to study the green waste, food waste a little bit more, and then also to know what other cities are doing. And I would feel a lot more comfortable if we just at least had one more conversation around this to answer some of the questions and considerations. But I would be willing to move forward with the CPI increase. So
Sam and I are definitely monitoring other cities. Like I said, this next couple of weeks is when there should be a lot more information about that. I have to say, it seems like cities are all waiting to see what each other is doing. They're kind of taking the same position that you are. So it'll be interesting to see, what ends up.
Okay. So as far as Arcadia, did they deviate from what was presented at all?
No.
Okay.
We actually, they adopted a 10-year extension. And within the 10-year extension was the price increases for the green waste and the food waste. Similar two-step process, July to December 31st, and then January on forward.
Well, we can consider Arcadia as part of our analysis and just to understand.
I believe the increase in Arcadia was over $10.
Not quite. I have that here. It was close to it. A total of $7.55. So again, it goes by weight. Arcadia has almost twice the amount of tonnage of green waste organics than Baldwin Park. So, which is why it's more expensive for them.
Okay. Well, if we could factor that in and consider what some of these cities are doing, Sam, and then we can have another conversation, but that would be my recommendation.
755. That was with the two combined. Right. Plus the CP, well, yeah. So they had a,
So my only concern, my biggest concern is the amount of money, right? So $6.34 and the lowest is $5.29. It adds up, right, for the families. So $5 is $5 is Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, right? And so the biggest concern is that we're passing down 100% of the problem to our residents, you know, and I think that there should be a way to see how we can work with waste management and the city and figure out a way to try to mitigate that at least a little bit. Even with the CPI, we're coming out of a pandemic, and even on a good year, I don't think the average resident gets a 3.5% raise in their, you know, so I think we have to look at all of it, see how we can work together, the city, waste management, and our residents to try to figure something out so that we can all meet in the middle. And I would want Rose and Enrique to keep an eye out on ARP guidelines and see how those change over the course of the year. And if potentially we can even hopefully work on a rebate for our customers.
okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Muse. And I believe at this point we are ready to recess to closed session. Is that correct? Great. Okay, so we are recessing to closed session.